Hey everybody, it's Father Edward Learning here, and today I want to share with you a few experiences about my desire to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation. Now you might hear that and you might think, oh, Father wants his parishioners to go to confession. Why, yes, that's true. I have a desire to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation with my parishioners. And I'm happy to say that when we offer confessions, we have a healthy number of people coming, seeking the mercy of God every single week. It's very beautiful to see. But what I want to share with you is the fact that I'm a sinner. And that there are times where I need to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation, where I want to go to confession. And as a priest, it's a little bit harder to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. When I lived in Brussels and served in Brussels, Lincoln Rosaire, it was a little easier to go to confession because the shrine in Champion was only about 20 minutes from where I lived. And I could pretty readily just go for any times that they had confessions, or I would call one of their priests and say, hey, I'd like to go to confession today. And he would hear my confession. Now, I found that now since I live in Shawano, sometimes there'll be priests that'll pass through, they'll stop in. Maybe there'll be a priest staying overnight, whatever. And I found that those are good opportunities for me to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. There have been a few times, though, when it was like, I don't know when I'll go or when I'll be able to go. And there are two stories that come to mind about this. The first is when I was studying down in Mundelein. I was a priest already, and I was doing summer studies to get a license in sacred theology and STL. And it was just one of those days where I'm like, I really would like to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. Now, Marytown was right next door, a beautiful place that has adoration, and the friars there often are available. They have regularly scheduled confession times, but it simply wasn't working in my schedule that week to go over there, maybe because of class or other things that were going on. And so I just remember praying that morning. I said, Lord, send me a priest to hear my confession. And there I was in the refectory. And, you know, there are other priests there, and some of them are your professors, and it's like, I don't know if I want to go to them. But as I was there in the refectory, which is the cafeteria, I look over there, and I see a priest there. It was the priest that I did my diaconate year with down in Antioch, Illinois. And so that priest was there. He had no reason to be at Mundelein. I think he just happened to stop in. And so there was Father John, and I went up to him and I said, hey, Father, it's so great to see you. Thanks so much for everything. And, you know, I was wondering, would you be willing to hear my confession? And so Father heard my confession. And so it was just kind of uncanny that that day I had just said, Lord, send me a priest. And he sent me a priest that I had worked with and that I was fond of. And so that priest heard my confession that day. Kind of a second story, very similar. I was thinking to myself, I was in Green Bay, I had a meeting. I thought, oh, you know, I'd like to go to confession today. And I'm like, oh, you know, I could prolong my day. I could try to make it to the shrine. It's not that far. I could text a priest here in town, and I would be able to go to confession. I was just due. I was ready to celebrate the sacrament. And I didn't know what to do. I kind of made the decision, I guess it's not going to work out today. I'm just going to go back home. And so as I'm walking out of this meeting, and I'm there in the hallway, well, here's another priest. And this priest doesn't work where I was at. He didn't work for the diocese and the chancery. He just happened to be there because he needed to drop off some paperwork. And so on a day where I already had thought in my head and probably asked the Lord to make a way possible for me to go to the sacrament of reconciliation, he sent me that priest. That priest who didn't necessarily need to be there at that exact moment, but he was there. And so we walk out, and I simply asked Father, I said, hey, Father, asked him a question, made some small talk, and then I said, hey, would you be willing to hear my confession? And he said, yes. So I share these stories with you, this experience of the desire to celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation. Because maybe in your life, you have that desire to celebrate the sacrament. And maybe as you're reading the scriptures, or as you're praying the rosary, as you're going to adoration, maybe something is tugging on your heart, and God is saying, I want you to go to confession. And so maybe you'll look up the next time confession is being offered. Or maybe you realize when you'll be able to celebrate that sacrament, and you carve out that time and you go and celebrate. Or maybe you call the parish office and you say, I'd like to go to confession with Father. And they'll put it on my calendar or whoever's priest's calendar, and we'll celebrate that sacrament. The sacrament of reconciliation is a sacrament of healing. It's a sacrament where God gives us grace to continue living the Christian life. And if you have that desire, and if God has placed that desire on your heart, don't ignore it. Go to the sacrament as soon as you're able. Experience the freedom that comes with following Jesus. And as you celebrate the sacrament and as you are forgiven, make that commitment to say, I'm going to fight as hard as I can. I'm going to resist the sins of my life, especially the ones that trouble me the most. I'm going to try to do even better this time. I'm going to try to live a sin-free life. The Lord is placing that desire on your heart because He wants to forgive. He wants to heal. He wants us to be more dedicated to Him. When someone comes to me, and it can be behind the screen, it could be face-to-face, whenever, wherever it is, and maybe they say, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 10 years since my last confession. What I always tell them is I say, you know what? God placed that desire on your heart to come to confession today because you're here. And you could have easily said no to that. You could have said, no, I got so much other things on my mind and on my plate. I don't have time. But you said yes to the Lord. And what He's going to do today is going to be quite profound. So I just encourage you. If it's been a long time since you've been to the sacrament of reconciliation, if you feel God tugging on your heart, and I think we all experience this, that there comes a moment where God is tugging on our heart, and He's saying, I want to bring you to a point of conversion in your life. I want you to change, and that moment of changing begins by acknowledging our sinfulness and asking for the Lord's mercy in that sacrament. And He's going to give us grace. He's going to strengthen us as His followers. If the Lord's tugging, say yes. Ask for His forgiveness. Seek out His mercy.